Sometime this week, possibly even tomorrow, the Supreme Court will decide the fate of President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan. It is a controversial topic, but it's also one that could help change people's financial lives. So here's President Biden speaking about his one-time debt relief program last summer.
All this means people can finally crawl out from under that mountain of debt, to get on top of their rent and their utilities, to finally think about buying a home or starting a family or starting a business.
Since that announcement, people applied to have their loans forgiven. Borrowers later received this email saying lawsuits are preventing the Department of Education from implementing its one-time student loan debt relief program. Our Gina Nguyen has more on what the plan offers and what student borrowers should know.
Alex, millions of borrowers are watching what happens at the Supreme Court this week. Student loan payments are set to resume in October after a 3-year pause. But if this controversial plan gets the thumbs up from the Supreme Court, it could alleviate a good chunk or eliminate all of what people owe. A Sacramento State graduate tells me today he's open to getting any help he can get.
A 2020 Sacramento State graduate, Quincy Corsi started his post-grad life in debt.
I think my last cost that I saw was about $30,000 at the time.
A $30,000 loan he was getting ready to start paying until the pandemic hit.
So by that time I graduated, I think it kind of froze everything because of COVID being in full effect at that point. So I haven't had to pay anything since then.
Now those payments are set to restart this fall when the pandemic pause comes to an end. Meanwhile, at the Supreme Court, it's up to the justices to decide if some of this debt should be forgiven altogether. If they agree with President Joe Biden's proposal, up to $10,000 or $20,000 of debt could be forgiven for millions of Americans.
Should the Supreme Court decide that the Biden administration does not have the unilateral authority to forgive those loans on its own without going through Congress or without going through some other, more democratic conversations.
If the Supreme Court allows a loan forgiveness plan, it could eliminate $10,000 in federal student loans for people making less than $125,000 a year. People who relied on Pell Grants while in college could see up to $20,000 knocked off their student loans. But Sacramento State professor Sanjay Varshney believes the Supreme Court won't be siding with Biden.
In my opinion, I think the Supreme Court I would be surprised if they actually allowed the Biden administration to go ahead and forgive the loans and put that huge burden on the taxpayers.
And while Corsi is not in a critical position with his finances at the moment, he says he understands how this could negatively impact many people nationwide.
When I have utility bills or car payments or rent just itself, then you got to add loans onto that as well. Even that $20 could probably make a difference to somebody.
Now, the U.S. Department of Education says borrowers will be expected to make payments starting again in October, while the interest on these loans will start accruing again in September.
And for people who are a little nervous about making these payments again, what should they know? What should they be doing?
Well, if you are concerned about making these payments, now is the time to involve a financial advisor. You should also be keeping an eye out in your email for more information from your loan servicers.
Yeah, and of course, we'll always keep you updated. And this student loan forgiveness program has a great impact on Californians. U.S. borrowers hold about $1.6 trillion in federal student loan debt. 3.8 million Californians owe more than $142 billion of that debt. And it's estimated about 2/3 of the state's borrowers would be eligible for up to $20,000 in loan forgiveness.